So in this, what I want to do is quickly show, going back into my applications view, I'm going to pick this, this one application blueprint. It's fairly simple. We have a few services defined over here in this model. So we have a gateway that we're deploying, which is acts as a Kubernetes ingress controller once it's deployed. But this is responsible for routing traffic into the application. And then we have some routing rules set up to allow traffic into various components of the application. So what I want to do is I want to deploy this application, and we'll show it at runtime of how somebody managing that application would interact with it, right? So to deploy the application, I'm going to select the option over here. We're going to give this a name. And we're going to select an environment type. So the environment type is what associates that application deployment to a set of policies. In this case, it's going to pick a cluster on Azure where Kubernetes is already up and running. And what you'll see in a few seconds is Nirmata is now, has already communicated with Kubernetes. The application components are coming up, and my app is going to be up and running, right? So, and the data will start populating as we start receiving data back from the cluster itself. So at this point, within the application, now that I've deployed it, now this was a simple example with about 2 or 3 services. It could be 20 services, 100 services, but it would be just as fast and just as repeatable once the application has been modeled out. But I can also do things like, just to show some basic management over here, if I want to, for example, my customer service needs 3 instances, and typically this would be done based on APIs, and through alarms we can also monitor various statistics and be able to change things. But you see now, and this maybe it went by fairly quickly, but now I have 3 instances of this service, right? So it's those type of things that we make extremely easy, extremely repeatable. And similarly, if I'm done with that test, and if I don't want those amount of instances, I would just turn that off, and the policy would reapply to my environment, right? So beyond just and those are very basic use cases that you would see. But even things like, say, for example, I want to now update my service in an environment. So I want to go from my latest tag to, let's say, a blue release, right? And I'm going to select the services I want to upgrade, apply that tag to all of the services. And in a single click, now I have my upgrade running. I could schedule this. But what you'll see here is now we're updating that application live. And what actually happens is if I had multiple instances, to manage your SLAs, first the instances or new instances brought up. Only once that passes health checks, the old instances are shut down, right? So your application is not losing anything from its connectivity or SLA perspective.
So is this how it would then plug into a CI/CD pipeline, that the CI/CD pipeline will be running all the time, would be calling out to Nirmata to upgrade to a new version?
Absolutely. So what our customers typically do is they would, when they want to spin up a dev environment or like a test environment for a new version, the CI/CD pipeline, Jenkins would call out to Nirmata, it would spin it up, run the automated test, collect the results, and shut down the environment. And Nirmata would decommission the host automatically based on that, right? So you can make this as flexible or as automated as needed.
So how simple, you brought up this application on AWS. You've obviously got your managed hosts on AWS. Mm-hmm. If you were doing the same thing but on-prem or in Google Cloud.
Same experience, right? So on-prem,
to switch it over, is that a complicated thing to do all the operational plumbing, or?
No, so you would, for on-prem, we plug into OpenStack as well as vSphere through their APIs. So for example, in vSphere, you would just define a resource pool and a template, and Nirmata can do the rest.
So is this application tied to a particular cloud in terms of the blueprint? Or if, no. For example, I'm sorry, I'm not actually asking a good question, but if you've got this application which is currently on Amazon, how difficult would it be to change that deployment to on-prem?
It's a single click. In fact, what one of our customers did is we even have an option to clone a running environment and to be able to run that on a different cloud. And
okay, so from this example, you would say application, let's run it on this cloud.
Yes.
Yeah. And all of that is controlled through policy. So I think the way, we didn't get into too much detail, but I went through it pretty quickly, but if we can go to resource selection policy, the policy, you can say, okay, for my environment type demo or staging, I want to use AWS, and for my environment type production, I want to use some other cloud. All of that is controlled through policy. So from a user standpoint, when they say, I want to deploy application, shop me in staging, the policy defines where that gets deployed, right? And these policies are set up, by the operations.
So you mentioned this policy. Does it factor in cost of running on a specific cloud as well?
So that request has come up, as you can envision, but no, today it does not.
Okay.
It's mostly performance constraints, things like that. And we're exploring, plugging into, service catalogs, things like that. And there's cost management systems also out there. So most likely we'll first address that through integrations to do that cost management and pick the best provider based on a workload.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was headed. And I would suggest don't try and build that in internally. Try and tap into other products that are doing that. But that would be a great way to even say, okay, the dynamics have changed from one location or one provider to another, and then build a level of automation in to physically move the applications from one provider to another based on policies, meaning no humans involved.
Right.
That could get real interesting really fast.
And that makes it truly cloud agnostic, that literally you could follow the sun, or you happen to get cheaper reserved instances or cheaper spot instances on AWS, and you can decide, well, off we go, that's going to be cheaper to run that today there.
Sure.
Well, you could also bring in other data. Like the example I often use is, great, so you're sitting in a data center on the East Coast, and all of a sudden there's a major hurricane that's coming up the East Coast. Based on your policies, you could build systems that essentially would then move those applications out of harm's way. I mean, the way we do it today, it's all done manually, right? You could automate that potentially if you're bringing in different data sources into this modeling.
Absolutely. Yes, so one other very exciting thing we're working on is more looking at traffic and what's coming in. I mentioned the Nirmata gateway, so we do have visibility into the number of requests, where the user requests are coming from, and being able to scale up, scale down. So this is exactly what we mean by optimize, right? So being able to optimize that, not just, so today it's mostly within a cloud provider, but the future absolutely is across clouds, right? So even within a cloud provider, using things like spot groups or spot fleet, as well as reserved instances correctly, leads to huge savings for enterprises. Being able to do that across cloud gives even more value. And
one of the benefits of being cross clouds is you're obviously going to have different metrics from Amazon or AWS or Azure, and they use completely different metrics, and you're able to suck that in and in a way correlate that a performance alert that comes in on an Amazon one is the equivalent to something on Azure, and you can then scale up and down.
Yeah, one just quick thing to highlight, and I know we're running short of time, but beyond just being able to deliver it, like here, for example, you immediately see that my application for the last right now it's showing 100% availability. But if I look at if I go and look at some of these services have alerts, right? And if I drill down, and this happens very often with containers, is I see maybe a certain service is showing less availability, and this could be because I'm going back in time, right? So for example, if I want to troubleshoot this particular service, with one single click, I can go back and see what happened in the last day. And what Nirmata automatically does, for example, here, we're showing when it failed, we're showing container exits. And this, again, like regardless of which cloud you're running on. And I can see that what happened over here is, maybe there was a check-in, which accidentally, there was a sick kill, which happened on a particular container. So I see the logs that my container came up, but there was a sick kill, and by the signal, this is a Docker exit code, which means it was out of memory. So there must be a memory limit set on this container, which triggered that exit. So being able to get that forensics and being able to look at your application even over time is a lot of the value that we're providing. We're collecting this data behind the scenes, making it easily available to developers, right?
Will you make it then, is the idea as well to make it simpler to have multi-cloud things? So at the moment, everything was deployed on Amazon, but you may have your data services in Azure, for example, because they've got great data services, and your app server and your app or web servers in Amazon or Google Cloud for different reasons.
Or your data may stay in your private cloud, right? And that example comes up often in enterprises. They want their data to be either in a colo like a Equinix or in a private cloud that they're managing, but then their web and their other properties to be on public clouds, and to choose which kind of cloud provider they want based on either applications today or other characteristics, runtime characteristics in the future.
So there's a double, I suppose, a double layer of benefit. One is being able to use multiple clouds, but then also within an application to spread those applications across multiple clouds.
Yeah.
But do you solve for the data inertia problem? Do you actually migrate data across clouds as well?
So we have had discussions with certain storage providers and vendors who are providing those kind of cross-cloud storage, and absolutely integrating into those and being able to call out. So today, what we can do within a cluster, we can do, take a snapshot, we can move that volume to a different container, but there's no reason why integrating with vendors or doing cross-cloud storage, that same benefit could be extended across clouds. All right, so just to quickly kind of wrap up and summarize, and I'm going to go back to our slides over here. So we looked through a demo very quickly, and we saw, so Nirmata, our focus is to be a complete management, a turnkey solution for application delivery, application management. It is multi-cloud, like we discussed in some detail, right? And today, most of the use cases we're seeing is being able to deploy an application mostly completely within a cloud, but being able to choose which cloud works best, maybe for dev tests, which for production, and having that flexibility. In the future, it's extending to the different use cases based on performance, based on characteristics. And the other unique thing about Nirmata is the SaaS-based control plane, which is an option we offer, or for product teams that require something more, we now have the on-premises control plane based on Kubernetes. So you could have your management plane distributed through Nirmata as a cloud service, and then your on-premises control plane through Kubernetes or a SaaS base through Nirmata. So with that, I'll stop here, and thank you very much for your time. Great questions, and really looking forward to building a relationship and engaging with all of you further.